to see that talk. There it is. Good morning.
Good morning.
So, it was chilly when I woke up this morning. I had all my windows open and the dog and the cat were all, I couldn't move. They were so close and it was really nice. Really nice. So it's almost Thanksgiving. Some of us are traveling to family, and some of us have family coming to us. A lot of us will celebrate with others as we challenge ourselves to eat as many different things as we can without doing ultimate damage to ourselves. And many of us will fail miserably at this. And in the midst of it all, we will remember what we're thankful for. All the blessings we're given, not only on Thanksgiving, but every day of our lives. And one way to be sure that you live in gratitude all year long is to jump into the divine flow of life. In his book titled In the Flow of Life, Eric Butterworth says that when we are in the flow, everything is right and in balance. And that leads us to this month's spiritual power emphasis, which is order. Living in the flow is acknowledging and living in divine order. Order, as I said a couple of weeks ago, is the ability to organize, sequence, balance, and adjust. And when used with love, it creates harmony in our lives. So for me, I'd say that the spiritual power of order and the divine flow are pretty much synonymous. Whenever I have that feeling that everything in my spiritual life is in order, I know I'm in the flow of life. Flow is something constant. There appears to be no beginning or end. Water in the form of a river or a stream making its way back to the ocean is probably our best example of flow. And unless we interfere in some way or there is some unusual drought condition, there is no beginning or end to this flow. And so is the flow of life. It's the constant flow of Christ consciousness that is at the center of your very being. It is God, Spirit, Source, whatever name you give that divine spark within you. It is the creator of all good in your life. Eric Butterworth calls being in the flow living from the inside out. There are two ways, I'm sure there are many more than two ways, but there are a couple of major ways that we look at life. The first way is that we come into the world as an empty vessel and go through life looking to be filled up or completed. Our life is made up in this perspective of whatever material things we accumulate and whatever experiences and relationships we have. The other way, the second way to look at life, and for me the preferable way, is that we come into the world as living spiritual beings. We have infinite potential because of the spiritual knowing that's already within us at our center. Most of us, though, have been conditioned to go out in the world and look for, or even beg for, the gifts of God. But Paul said in 2 Timothy 1:6, rekindle the gift of God that is within you. This suggests that we've had it all along, just like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. It's within ourselves. I wonder if any of you have been checking the political and world news to see what kind of day you're having. I caught myself doing this a while back, and I can tell you it's not really a place I want to live, constantly checking in out there to see what's going on. Because when we do that, we're almost ensuring that we have a bad day. And the only way really to combat this is to jump back into the flow. Live in divine order and live from the inside out. I've shared with you that when I'm on my drive here from Glendale, I frequently listen to talks, and I've now involved myself in this whole 24 hours of talks on self-acceptance. All different people. Each hour is a different person speaking. And that focus speaks to almost everything. Every time I'm coming here to say something, I'll listen to someone and they'll say something relevant. And what I heard this morning was from a Buddhist who is also a social worker background. And she said, if you stop engaging your problems, if you could stop thinking about your problems, and I don't mean going into denial, I mean if you just could stop thinking about your problems, you would no longer have those problems. And I thought, that's really what we believe, isn't it? What we focus on expands. And if we need to focus on what we want instead of what we don't have. And I thought, that is really the truth. If we truly could stop thinking, I'm not sure I've ever totally succeeded in that. But I do have moments when I succeed 98%. And it's really good when you can stop thinking about your problems and just be totally present in the now, in the flow. Those problems cease to exist. There are some things we can do to move into the flow. First, I know I just keep saying this, but daily meditation. 10 minutes a day. 10 minutes a day of contact with your inner source will change your life. It can be more, of course, or even less, but I promise you, 10 minutes a day would change your life. Second, forgiveness. If you're feeling out of the flow, it's very likely that you haven't forgiven someone for something. Almost any negative experiences that are obstacles in your life can be attached to some unforgiveness. The truth is, to stay in the flow, we literally have to forgive everyone for everything, including ourselves. Next, always look for the good. We just said it. Instead of dwelling on lack and negativity, always look for the good in everything. If you get used to knowing that everything is meant for good, it will change your life and put you in the flow. Next, live in the consciousness of God, or practice the presence of God. Always knowing that we are one with God and with all of God's creation, ensures that we're in the flow. And finally, start each day with a grateful heart. So are you beginning to get the picture about the flow? This constant flow of more and more God. It comes through you. It bubbles up out from deep within you. And if you only take it in, but do not send it out into your life and into the world, you stop the flow. There are benefits and gifts we receive from living in the flow. Order is one of the gifts of the flow, and there are others. Healing. Come on. There it is. Healing. Living in the flow, we get to experience our wholeness. We are complete and lacking in nothing at our core. Another gift is release. Release from the obstacles that slow our spiritual growth. When we're in the flow, things by definition just go more smoothly. We acknowledge that change is a constant, and we are able to practice acceptance and non-resistance, which leads to a happier and more fulfilling life. Next gift is oneness with God and all other creations of God. In the flow, we're connected with God and all that there is. And probably the most important gift of living in the flow is experiencing unlimited divine substance. This substance is what is meant in Acts 17, where it says, "In him we live and move and have our being." This is actually what we mean when we talk about a prosperity consciousness. Divine substance. We've talked about what we can do to move into the flow and what spiritual gifts we get from living in the divine flow. But just as with all of our spiritual powers and gifts, as human beings, we do things to block the flow. So the first one is worry. It's pretty hard to be in the flow when we're worried. Butterworth said, I love this quote from Butterworth, "If you're worried about something you don't have, or about losing something you do have, you're not in the flow." This would describe a lot of us most of the time. It's called living in lack rather than prosperity consciousness. We've lost track of the substance in our lives and have acquired the not enough habit. If you look at right now, right here, in this room, at this moment, you have everything you need right here, right now. And we can do that almost any time in our lives. And that keeps us in the flow. Next is lack of forgiveness. If there is anyone you haven't forgiven, including yourself, about anything, if you're having ill will or bad feelings toward anyone, if you ever get that, it served him right, or she had it coming to her kind of thing going on, you're not in the flow. To stay in the flow, we have to let it go and focus on our own good. The next one that blocks our flow is needing to be in control. Do we have any control freaks out here today? Almost all of us have something in our lives that we feel like we need to control. If you just have to be in control of everything going on in your life, including all the people around you and what they're doing and how they're interacting with you, that will take you out of the flow. Non-resistance is the key here. It will move us back into the flow. The next one is comparing ourselves to others and competition. The minute you do this, you're out of the flow. Each of us is on our own spiritual journey. It's not ours to judge another's. So in the flow, another's path is none of our business. And finally, burnout will block the flow. Pushing through, forcing things to happen, rather than surrendering to the guidance of Spirit. You're out of the flow if you're pushing too hard, trying to make it happen rather than letting it be. Meeting an obstacle and working harder and harder rather than consulting our source for divine guidance takes us out of the flow. So, how do we stay in the flow? The simple answer, here I go again, prayer and meditation. Butterworth says that, this is another quote I love, meditation is thought that is synchronized with the flow. Thought that is synchronized with the flow. Releasing the power from within you. This is how you get your guidance. And you can't make a bad choice. If you head in a direction you decide you don't like, you just choose another way. Infinite do-overs in the flow. Change is inevitable. We are in constant flux. And things don't always go the way we planned or wanted them to. In fact, things rarely go the way we plan. But you don't have to let it take you out of the flow. Here's what you do. You can try this affirmation. I've shared this with you before, but I think it's been a while. I accept the reality of this situation, but not its permanence. Say that with me. I accept the reality of this situation, but not its permanence. Say it again. I accept the reality of this situation, but not its permanence. So that thing of constant change can definitely work in your favor. It doesn't serve you well to pretend it hasn't happened. To move on, you have to accept it and feel the feelings of disappointment or any other negative feelings that came with it. But you can stand up to it by affirming that you have all you need to meet the challenge. That it has no power over you. Because God in you is greater than anything you can encounter. When we develop our spiritual power of order and put ourselves into the divine flow, we naturally feel whole. The dictionary defines wholeness as the state of forming a complete and harmonious unity. Who knew the dictionary was so spiritual? Or the state of being unbroken or undamaged. Who doesn't want to feel unbroken? Butterworth calls it the healing stream, a universal flow of wholeness. There's a basic truth accepted among physiologists. One of the guiding principles of Hippocratic medicine is that organisms left alone can often heal themselves. Butterworth says that healing power of nature points to the universal tendency for everything to return to normal whenever the balance of life has been disturbed. If you scar a tree with an axe and return in a few weeks, nature will have healed the scar. Or if you cut your finger, put a Band-Aid on it, and take it off in a few days, it will be healed. Butterworth says, and I believe, the healing stream of life is the reality behind every appearance of healing, whether by medication or meditation. He believed, as I do, that our bodies are programmed to heal themselves. Our divine guidance can lead us to the appropriate modalities to help it along. And this healing stream he talks about is a major piece of the flow of our life. One last critical thing to remember about living in the flow of life and benefiting from the result, which is order, is that by definition, flow is a passing thing, ever moving and changing. Life comes to pass. How many times in the Bible do we read, and it came to pass? How often have we said, this too shall pass? And so it shall. If it's challenging and hard and negative, it will pass. If it's wonderful and fun and positive, it will pass. Life itself is a flowing experience. This is where we use our affirmation. I accept the reality of this situation, but not its permanence. Our challenges did not come to stay. They came to pass. It is always our attitude that matters the most. Not holding on to any one thought or circumstance will keep us always in the flow. Nothing is permanent, and only one event in life is truly terminal. Butterworth reminds us that when we're going through a tunnel, it's best not to dwell on the thought that we're sitting in darkness, but rather focus on the light at both ends. And even though it is in our nature to want to get back to normal, it's always best to remember that as we move along in life, living in the flow, simply due to the uniqueness of our experiences, we will never be the same again. So, getting back to the old normal is not a reality. In the flow, we can be certain of one thing. Only God is absolute. And since the Spirit of God and Christ consciousness is at our core, when we focus on and remember who we really are, through regular prayer and meditation and communion with the Spirit, we learn to live joyfully and with many blessings in the flow of life. Thank you. So let's prepare for meditation. Get comfortable where you are. Breathe easily, deeply. Release any kind of obstacles you came in with this morning. Just be totally present here, knowing that we are so blessed to be here today. So blessed to be surrounded in love and joy and peace and truth. We're so, so grateful. We're grateful for order in our lives. We're grateful to know that there is a divine order. And that it lives at the core of us. And that all we have to do is seek our source. And we reap the benefits of this order in our lives every day. We're grateful for this church, for all the love that comes here and that goes from here out into the world. I'm grateful for every person here today. Every person who isn't here but would like to be. Every person who isn't here but is part of this group. We are always connected. As we move into this time of year when we celebrate so much, we open our hearts to all the joy that we can receive. And we just open our hearts to more and more love, more and more God, more and more divine order. And we remember that we carry this with us no matter where we go. And we are blessed. And so it is. Amen.